My name is Emily Carter. I'm 31 years old and currently work as a financial advisor at an investment firm in Denver, Colorado. I don't like showing off. I hate waste. And I absolutely never live beyond my means. My coworkers joke that I'm the woman who lives inside a spreadsheet, but I don't mind. Every dollar I save today is the foundation for the freedom I'll have tomorrow. I'm the youngest of two sisters. My older sister, Samantha, is 4 years older than me. If my childhood was like blank pages tucked away in a corner drawer, hers was a glossy comic book displayed right in the middle of the living room, bright, celebrated, and constantly cherished. Samantha was always the center of attention. Golden hair, a dazzling smile, and a voice that could stop a room mid-conversation. My parents never admitted it, but the favoritism was always there like a glossy coat over every decision made in our house. From the first bike, to the overseas trip, to a high school graduation party that looked like a full-blown banquet, everything was for Samantha. Me? A quiet dinner with a, well, as long as you pass, kind of toast was considered enough. Samantha got married early, just a year after graduating college. Her husband, Daniel, is a civil engineer in construction. They have two kids, Chloe, who's 8, and Lucas, who's 5. Their small family currently lives in a 2-bedroom apartment downtown, where the sounds of traffic and complaints about rent rise like background noise. Every week at family gatherings, Samantha often complains that she's exhausted from juggling everything, that the kids don't have enough space to grow, and that Denver is slowly swallowing their whole life. I never compare, but sometimes the contrast is just too stark to ignore. While they struggle with rising expenses, I, even living modestly, maintain a stable and peaceful life. I rent a small apartment in the suburbs owned by the parents of Rachel, my best friend from college. They rent it to me for half the market rate because they trust me, and I've never let them down. I spend most of my time at home. Working remotely became routine after the pandemic. I love the quiet feeling of sitting in front of my laptop with a bookshelf of finance books behind me, a warm cup of tea to my right, and a window view of trees shifting with the seasons. I don't need much. I dream of a small house with a garden where I can grow herbs, listen to birds in the morning, and maybe bake on weekends. I spent nearly 7 years saving for that dream. No eating out more than 3 times a month, no shopping unless it's on the need list, no credit card debt, no buying a new car if the old one still works. I turned down fancy vacations for hiking trips through the Rocky Mountains. People call me an extreme minimalist, but I call it the freedom to choose. I've never blamed my parents for favoring Samantha, but I learned early on that if I didn't plan my life, no one else would. And that's exactly why, when the dream of my own home started to feel within reach, I never expected the storm that followed the one named my family. Last week, after reviewing the balances in my 3 savings accounts, housing, investment, and emergency, I knew I was ready. Not maybe another year would be better, ready. But truly ready. Enough for a down payment, enough for the fees, and enough to cover the mortgage for years to come without sacrificing my way of living. That evening, I went to my parents' house for dinner, as usual, a Sunday gathering with barbecue, garlic bread, and conversations that usually revolved around the kids' school, gas prices, or Samantha's latest issue with her washing machine. I wasn't planning to say anything. The plan was to stay quiet, finalize everything, and then share. But as I scrolled through property listings while waiting for dessert, an image popped up, a little wooden house with a wide porch and a sun-drenched garden, and I couldn't help but smile. "What's making you smile like that?" Samantha asked, setting her orange juice down. I looked up, hesitated, then decided to be honest. "I'm house hunting, planning to buy next month." Silence. As if I'd just admitted I had a secret life in Alaska. My mom set her fork down with deliberate sound. "Buying a house. By yourself?" "Yes," I said. "I've been planning this for a long time. I want somewhere peaceful, close to nature, not too far from the city, but away from all the honking and traffic." My dad raised an eyebrow. Samantha stared at me like I had just announced I was buying a spaceship. "Emily," my mom said, in that voice that sounded like concern but felt like a command, "you can't just think about yourself like this. Buying a house is a big deal. You should have at least talked to us first." I kept calm. "Mom, I've been saving for 7 years. It's my money. I didn't borrow from anyone. I'm not in debt." Samantha jumped in, her voice a bit louder than usual. "I'm not saying you can't buy a house, but you need to think ahead. A house should have space for others, not just for living alone forever." "And who exactly are the others here?" I asked, half joking. No one answered, but the exchanged glances between my mom and Samantha made me uneasy. The next night, as I was preparing financial documents for the mortgage application, I got a text from my mom. I just spoke with Miss Karen at church. There's a beautiful house in Cedar Ridge, 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, big backyard for the kids to run around. I'll send you the link. Then came a flood of messages from Samantha. You have to check this one out. Great school district, supermarket nearby, even has a home office. If you get that place, we could visit more often. I looked at the giant living room, the hotel-like kitchen with 2 refrigerators, and sighed. Thanks, but I'm looking for something smaller and quieter. Samantha replied with just one word. Why? I didn't respond. 3 days later, during my lunch break, my mom called, excitement in her voice. Sweetie, I just saw the house on Maple Street. The owners are moving soon. They're slashing the price. The master has a balcony and 2 small bedrooms, perfect for kids. You've got to see it. I closed my eyes for a second and replied as gently as I could, Mom, I really don't need that much space. I don't have kids, and I'm not planning to have anyone move in. Oh, but you'll want to, she argued. And even if not, Samantha and the kids could come stay on weekends. They need the space. That apartment is way too cramped. That's when it hit me. The pieces fell into place. The hints, the exchanged looks at dinner, the family-friendly listings. None of it was random. They didn't just want me to buy a house, they wanted me to buy one. For them. And I knew if I stayed silent, if I went along just to avoid upsetting anyone, I'd be giving up the most precious thing I'd built my entire adult life. A life that was truly mine. I signed the contract for my dream home on a bright April morning, a 2-bedroom wooden house nestled among the pine trees north of Boulder, about a 45-minute drive from downtown Denver. A spacious backyard, a small greenhouse, raised garden beds already in place. As I stepped onto the porch and took the keys, from the former owner, I almost cried, not out of sentiment but because for the first time. I was choosing my life, no interference, no director. I kept it secret that whole week, planning to share it at Saturday dinner at my parents' as a happy surprise. I imagined a proud smile from Dad, a teary hug from Mom, but when I said the words, I bought a house. The entire room fell still. Samantha stiffly set her glass down, eyes fixed on me. You bought it? You mean, you already signed everything? I nodded, giving a soft smile. Yes, last week. I'm moving in at the end of the month. My mom sat up straight, placing her hand on her chest like she'd just heard something earth-shattering. And how could you make that decision on your own? You know we've been house hunting for you. We? I frowned, a cold shiver running down my spine. What do you mean we? Who exactly? Samantha looked up, expressionless. Daniel and me. We've thought this through. The house Mom picked is near the best elementary school in the area. Chloe and Lucas would each have their own room. You don't need that much space. It's perfect. I laughed silently, bitterly. Wait, you're all talking about that house as if I'd buy it. So your entire family could move in? My dad calmly set down his fork. His voice was low and firm. Emily, you're the only one in the family who's financially stable right now. Helping each other is what family does. I turned to my mom. You feel the same? Her eyes didn't deny it. You live alone, work from home, have a steady income. Samantha's struggling in that tiny apartment. The kids don't have space. If you care about your sister, then I should give up my dream to support someone else's life? I cut in. My voice was raspy. No one answered. Daniel, who had been silent the entire dinner, sniffed slightly, like he'd been dragged into this unwillingly. I can fix up the place, Emily. If it's that 4-bedroom house, I could turn it into an ideal setup. No charge. I turned to Samantha. You know what? I actually thought you'd at least ask me, not assume, not make plans behind my back. I didn't think I needed to, Samantha shrugged. You're my sister. You're more than capable. I'm stuck. You have the kind of stability I've never had. I pushed my chair back and stood up. None of you ever asked what I wanted. And now that I finally have something I spent a decade building, you're staring me down like I'm selfish for not handing it over to the family? You're betraying us, Emily, my mom said, her voice sharp as a blade. Barbara on Maple Street was willing to lower the price. Big house, safe neighborhood. Everyone's been planning for weeks, just waiting on your yes. I stood still for a long moment, looking around the table, blame in one face, expectation in another. Quiet disappointment in the rest, but no one, not a single person had asked, Emily, are you happy? What do you want? I didn't buy a house to make room for someone else, I said slowly. I bought it because I wanted a home, for myself, a life I chose. And you were all wrong to think you could just claim that without even asking. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. Behind me, Samantha blurted, "You're tearing this family apart over a house." I stopped, my hand on the doorknob. "It's not about a house," I said. "It's about finally being old enough to know who's living my life and who shouldn't be." I opened the door and stepped outside without looking back. The air was crisp, but I felt warmer than I had in years. Because for the first time, I wasn't asking for permission to be myself. I got back to my old apartment feeling dazed like I'd just walked out of a battle. The door shut behind me with a dry thud, sealing me off from the arguing, the accusatory stares, and the quiet disappointment clinging to every glance at that dinner table. I dropped my bag on the floor and didn't bother turning on the lights. In the blurry darkness, I stood motionless, my chest hollow, like everything had collapsed with no warning. My phone started vibrating less than 30 minutes later. First, it was my mom. 3 missed calls in a row. Then a nearly half-page message. "You need to come to your senses. Family is family. This isn't a game. Don't let your pride ruin everything." Then my dad. "Call me. Now." I set the phone on the table without replying. The screen kept lighting up like a constant reminder that I had disrupted their version of normal. But really, what was normal? Me always being the backup plan for someone else's life? I turned on the light. The warm yellow glow filled the small, tidy apartment I'd lived in for over 6 years. The affordable place offered through the kindness of my best friend Rachel's parents. I used to see it as a refuge. Now, it felt like a waiting room before the next chapter. The phone wouldn't stop. Now it was a text from Samantha. "Are you really this heartless? My kids didn't do anything wrong. I thought you understood. Turns out you only live for yourself." I leaned back in my chair, a quiet anger rising in me. They called me selfish. They said buying a small home with my own effort and discipline was a betrayal. But in all those years, had anyone ever asked what I wanted? Had anyone ever paused long enough to see how I'd lived, or what I'd sacrificed? At 11, Samantha got sent to jazz dance classes. I got enrolled in evening math tutoring. Because you're good at it, don't fall behind. At 17, Samantha got a brand new Jeep for college. I got Dad's old Civic with a pat on the back. It still runs. Don't be picky. At 20, she studied out of state, fully funded by our parents. I worked 30 hours a week just to afford community college. And now that I've finally built something for myself, they see it as something they can just take to help the one they've always favored. The screen lit up again, this time from Aunt Cynthia, my mom's sister. "Emily, I heard what happened. Your mom is heartbroken. Don't destroy your family over a moment of rebellion." Then from Aunt Helen. "You know, when you were little, your mom always said you were the most stubborn. But being too stubborn only makes you lonely." I started feeling suffocated. But loneliness wasn't half as terrifying as being surrounded by people who thought they had the right to dictate your life. I turned off my phone, for the first time in years. I knew I needed a night where no one could reach me, no familiar voices, no silent accusations, no guilt quietly planted in every word. The next morning, I got up early, brewed coffee, and watched the sunlight stream through the window. The decision was clear. I would move into my new home within 2 weeks. I wouldn't share the address with anyone except my lawyer, the moving company, and the 3 closest friends who had never judged, only listened and supported. I scheduled the internet transfer, paid the moving team's deposit, and I set daily reminders to pack. 1 item, 1 book, 1 small dream I'd once tucked into a drawer, at a time. That evening, I got an anonymous email. The subject line read, "Family shouldn't be abandoned over money." I didn't need to read it to know who wrote it. I just opened my laptop and replied, "It's not about money. It's about not making space in my life for people who don't respect boundaries." I hit send, then closed my computer. That night, I slept better than I had in a year. I moved on a cool Monday morning. The moving truck arrived on time just as professional as the reviews had promised. I'd picked a weekday on purpose. Everyone in the family would be busy with work or the kids' schedules. No one would have time to follow. Even though I had changed my phone number, deleted my social media, and redirected all mail to the new place, I still felt the need for absolute silence. Not because I was afraid they'd come looking. I just didn't want any of them in my space anymore. The small house on the tree-lined street in the town of Monroe, about an hour from Denver, was the first place I ever walked into and felt a deep sigh of relief. No one asking who I planned to move in, no one checking if the living room was big enough for family parties. Just the sound of wind through the maple trees, sunlight falling across the hardwood floor, and the warm scent of pine in every breath. I spent the first week unpacking, cleaning, and arranging things exactly how I wanted. No one stopped me from painting the office olive green. No one told me not to waste money on a tomato trellis in the backyard. And for the first time, I bought myself a patio set just for morning tea. No excuse for guests. I joined a local gardening club just days after moving in. The first meetup was at Grace's house, a kind woman in her 50s with a blooming lavender garden and a gentle smile. No one asked where I came from. They only cared what I was growing, whether I'd pruned roses before, and if I was interested in swapping seeds. I also met Liam, a man about my age who works as a freelance landscape designer. He came to help me fix the irrigation system and trim back the branches that were blocking sunlight from my herb trellis. We didn't talk much about family, and that strangely felt like a relief. Amid conversations about soil, sunlight, and how to keep rabbits away, I found myself slowly opening up again, naturally, without pressure. Work was going better than ever. Remote work, free from stressful messages or passive-aggressive remarks, allowed me to focus and be more creative. A project I pitched to a major client got approved in just 1 week, something that had never happened before. My direct manager, Karen, called to congratulate me and told me I'd be getting a raise, along with a request to help train new hires. For the first time, I was being recognized, not just for doing well, but for being me. Every Saturday, I rode my bike to the farmer's market downtown, picked out fresh vegetables, and chatted with familiar vendors. One time, I helped a little girl pick the right kind of onion her mom had written on a grocery list. Later, her mom invited me to join a local book club at the library. I said yes. Why not? No one there knew I'd once been called a traitor for not letting my sister move into my home. They just knew me as Emily, the woman with thriving basil and surprisingly refined taste in books. Sometimes I still glimpsed photos of Samantha or my mom through the social media of old friends, vague captions about selfish family members, or pictures of the kids squeezed into a tiny room with comments like happy no matter what. I'd learned to scroll past them without feeling anything more than a slight frown because I'd stopped needing their validation. I don't know what the future holds, but I know this. I'm no longer the girl who bends herself into silence, no longer playing the role my family scripted for me. I chose me. And that's what saved me. One late autumn afternoon, while I was sitting by the window sorting seed packets for next spring, the doorbell rang. I thought it was Liam or Grace, but when I looked through the peephole, I froze. Samantha. Her hair was loosely tied, eyes sunken. She carried an old tote bag. Behind her stood Chloe and Lucas, thinner than the last time I saw them. All three stood silently, not saying a word. I opened the door without speaking. The cold air rushed in with Samantha's hesitant breath. I wasn't sure I was still allowed to knock, she said. Her voice held no blame, only exhaustion. I didn't invite them in, but I didn't send them away either. We stood there in tense silence for a few seconds. Then Chloe quietly said, "Auntie, Mommy said if we were good, we could see your flower garden." I crouched down and gently touched her head. "I just planted some white chrysanthemums. Do you like those?" She nodded. And just like that, they came in. Not as welcomed guests, but as people who had lost that privilege, and somehow found one last chance. Samantha didn't apologize right away. We drank tea in silence, watching the kids carefully explore the garden, as if afraid to disturb the fragile peace that wrapped around the house. Then she finally spoke, her voice barely above the wind. "I thought you'd always be the one who takes it all, like before, like Mom taught us. But you're stronger than all of us." I looked at her, not as the favored child anymore, but as a mother slowly realizing her own limits. "I'm not strong," I said. "I'm just tired of being treated like an obligation." Samantha nodded, her eyes red. "I was wrong to think blood gave me the right to walk into your life without knocking." I didn't say I forgave her. I didn't accuse her either. Everything that needed saying had already been left behind, but I knew that didn't mean I'd forget. 3 weeks later, I took Chloe and Lucas to the town's book fair. The kids buzzed around picking out children's books. I spotted Liam leading an art activity for kids under a maple tree. Lucas ran up asking for watercolor paints, and Chloe sat down like the place had always been hers. Liam looked at me and smiled, a warmth and understanding in his eyes. "These two look like they're already at home here, huh?" I nodded. "Looks like they've found their quiet corner." He didn't ask much. No one here asked about my past anymore. They only cared how I was living today. I started to realize the space around me wasn't just a house. Every basil plant, every carrot bed, Every book on the wooden shelves was part of a life I had built with my own hands, not for anyone else, for me, and for the people I chose to let in. Family, I realized, isn't just about shared blood. It's the people who respect your boundaries, the ones who knock before entering your heart, the ones who don't treat your kindness like a permanent obligation. Grace invited me to join her for the upcoming Winter Festival. The library book club nominated me to host next month's meeting, and Liam. He didn't say much, but sometimes he left a basket of oranges at my door with a little note. Picked this morning, stay warm with fresh juice. I smiled every time I saw it, and inside I felt full. Thank you so much for the reminder. I'll rewrite the ending to make it both surprising and logical, with emotional depth staying true to Emily's story, a journey of growth, of boundaries, and a heart still open to sincere remorse. One evening, while I was finishing up a financial plan for a client, when my phone lit up with a message from Samantha. I'm looking for a new job. Not asking anything from you, just wanted to say I'm managing on my own now. Thank you for not slamming the door shut. I didn't reply right away. I simply looked up, out into the garden under the gentle moonlight. Peace no longer felt like a luxury. It was the result of choice. And I knew I had chosen well. Family can be born of blood. But sometimes, the deepest, most lasting relationships are nurtured through choice, respect, and kindness. A week later, I received an email from HR. We're reviewing candidates for the new financial training program. One applicant, Samantha Marks, included a reference letter stating she'd been guided by an independent advisor during her career shift. That advisor is you. I froze. I had no idea Samantha had taken that much initiative. What surprised me even more? She had quoted something I once wrote on my professional blog. Everyone deserves a fresh start, but you have to take that first step on your own. Samantha hadn't reached out asking for help. She didn't ask me to put in a good word. She chose a different path, quietly showing she was changing, through action, not words. That evening, returning from book club, I spotted a small note clipped to my wooden fence. Aunt Emily, I helped Mom write her resume. I think she's trying really hard, just like you. She still doesn't drink ginger tea the right way, but I'm teaching her. P.S. Did you plant more purple chrysanthemums? It was Chloe's handwriting, messy, heartfelt, and enough to make my chest tighten. I sat down on the front steps, watching the leaves sway in the early winter wind. I didn't cry, but something inside me softened, like ice touched by the first spring sun after a long, bitter season. None of us are perfect, but we're learning to grow, not to meet someone else's expectations, but because we want to become better versions of ourselves. 3 weeks later, Samantha officially joined the internal training program. She walked into the same building where I worked, not as Emily's sister, but as herself. And for the first time, I saw her nod toward me in the lobby, a silent acknowledgement that seemed to say, "Thank you for teaching me to knock before trying to walk back into your life." That night, Liam stopped by with a basket of oranges and a few sprigs of dried rosemary. No note, no explanation. Just the quiet presence of someone who didn't need to know my past, but was always there when I was ready to share. I placed the basket on the table, brewed a pot of tea, and opened the window. The scent of soil, wind, and fresh basil from the garden wrapped itself into every breath I took. I don't know what lies ahead, but this I know for sure. I no longer live to please others. I live to be true to myself and to leave the door open, only for those who know how to knock with humility. Because sometimes, the most beautiful endings aren't reunions or farewells, but the quiet moment when you can finally look someone in the eye, even from a distance, and feel nothing but peace. This story is a powerful reminder. Being family doesn't always mean being a safe place. Sometimes the people we grow up with aren't the ones who grow with us. True peace comes from having the courage to draw boundaries, protect your space, and choose a life that honors who you really are. What's your take on Emily's decision? Was she protecting her peace or turning her back? Let us know in the comments below.